Hello, welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today, we are going to discuss the important issues appearing in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 7 June 2019. The news to be discussed has been presented on the screen, and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So, let's start our today's discussion. The first news appears on page number 1 and also appears as a continuation on page number 14. Now, this news is with respect to anti-defection. It says that Speaker endorses merger of 12 Congress MLAs with the ruling TRS. So, in this news, 12 MLAs of Congress party defected to the TRS, that is Telangana Rashtra Samiti party. This defection or joining of these 12 MLAs to the TRS party was approved by the Speaker of Legislative Assembly of Telangana. And the Speaker recognized these 12 members of Congress party as members of the ruling party in Telangana. Now these 12 members said that they constituted 2/3 of the total 18 MLAs of Congress and hence they were allowed to defect under the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution. Now 10th schedule to the Indian Constitution was added by the Constitution 52nd Amendment Act. Now unless this merger is reversed, Congress party will lose its status of opposition in the Telangana Legislative Assembly. This topic of anti-defection in your prelims examination becomes a part of Indian polity and governance, and your mains gets covered under GS paper 2 under special features of the Indian Constitution. Now this topic of anti-defection becomes important as a question in the year 2013 was asked in the mains examination and a prelims question was asked in the year 2014. The prelims question was, which one of the following schedules of the Constitution of India contains provision regarding anti-defection? In this, the correct answer was D, that is 10th schedule. The question asked in the mains was, the role of individual MPs, that is members of parliament, has diminished over the years and as a result, healthy constructive debates on policy issues are not usually witnessed. How far can this be attributed to the anti-defection law which was legislated but with a different intention? So we understand that anti-defection law becomes a very important subject with respect to prelims as well as mains examination. So on this note, let us understand some of the important terms as highlighted in the anti-defection law. Now the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution, which was added by Constitution 52nd Amendment, deals with disqualification on grounds of defection. So the provision with respect to defection states that a member of a house belonging to any political party shall be disqualified for being a member of the house if he has voluntarily given up his membership of such political party or if he votes or abstains from voting in such house, and this voting or abstention from voting is contrary to the direction issued by the political party to which he or she belongs. So we understand that there are two grounds with respect to defection. One is that if the person voluntarily gives up his membership of such political party or if he or she votes or abstains from voting contrary to the decision or stand taken by the political party. So, if a whip has been issued by the political party, then its members in the parliament as well as in the state legislative assembly must vote as per the party lines or as per the stand taken by the political party. So, this aspect becomes extremely important, that is, if the person votes or abstains from voting in such house which is contrary to any direction issued by the political party to which he or she belongs. So, these are the two important grounds with respect to defection as provided under the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution. However, there is an exception with respect to disqualification. Now, paragraph 4 under 10th schedule highlights that disqualification on ground of defection not to apply in case of merger. So, the concept of merger has been specifically provided in the 10th schedule. Now, paragraph 4 of 10th schedule provides for certain grounds on which this anti-defection law shall not apply to a member. These grounds are, it says that a member shall not be disqualified if the original party merges with another political party. The next ground is if a member has not accepted the merger and has opted to function as a separate group. So in such case where a person has not accepted the merger and has opted to function as a separate group, shall not be disqualified under the 10th schedule. Further, another provision says that the merger shall be deemed to have taken place if and only if not less than two-thirds of the members of the legislative party have agreed. So this becomes a very important provision which states that a merger shall not take place unless two-thirds of the members of the legislative assembly have agreed for the merger. So we understand that these 12 MLAs of Congress party who have willingly accepted to join TRS constitutes two-thirds of the 18 members of the Congress party who were in the opposition. Hence, this merger has been approved by the Speaker of Legislative Assembly of Telangana. So we understand that this news on merger becomes extremely important from our examination perspective, as questions in both prelims as well as mains have been asked by UPSC. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news appears on page number 1. It says Rajnath inducted into cabinet panel following controversy. Defense Minister earlier left out of CCPA, that is Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs, due to oversight. Now in this news, let us understand about the cabinet committees, as these cabinet committees are constituted under the Government of India Transaction of Business Rules. Now this topic of cabinet committees in your prelims examination becomes a part of Indian polity and governance, specifically under political system, and in your mains gets covered under GS paper 2 under Indian Constitution, Parliament, as well as functions and responsibilities of the Union and states. Now as you can see, the Government of India Transaction of Business Rules have been constituted as per Article 77 of the Indian Constitution. And it says that the President has the power to make the following rules for more convenient transaction of business of the Government of India. And these rules may be called the Government of India Transaction of Business Rules 1961. So on this note, Article 77 of the Indian Constitution becomes extremely important for us to know. So let us go through Article 77 of the Indian Constitution. Now as you can see, Article 77 mentions about conduct of business of the Government of India. It says that all executive action of the Government of India shall be expressed to be taken in the name of the President. It further says orders and other instruments shall be executed in the name of the President of India. And such order of the President shall not be called in question on the ground that it is an order or instrument made or executed by the President. So, such an order of the President under Article 77 shall not be called into question on the ground that it is an order or instrument made or executed by the government. It further highlights that the President shall make rules for more convenient transaction of the business of the Government of India and also for the allocation among ministers of the said business. So it is on the basis of this allocation among ministers of the said business, the Government of India Transaction of the Business Rules 1961 was constituted. Now section 6 of this rules talks about constitution of committees of the cabinet, and it says that there shall be standing committees of the cabinet as set out in the first schedule to these rules. And the first schedule of these rules shall also provide for the functions which has to be performed by these different standing committees. It says that the Prime Minister may from time to time amend the schedule by adding or reducing the numbers of such committees or by modifying the functions assigned to them. So it becomes very important that the Prime Minister has the power to either reduce or add the numbers of such committees or modify the functions assigned to its members. It further highlights that each standing committee shall consist of such minister as the Prime Minister may from time to time specify. So the Prime Minister has a say in the constitution of such cabinet committees. So as you can see, the first schedule to this transaction of business rules provide for different standing committees. These standing committees are Appointments Committee of the Cabinet, Cabinet Committee on Accommodation, Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs, Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs, Cabinet Committee on Security, Cabinet Committee on Investment, as well as Cabinet Committee on Skill Development. So these are the different 8 cabinet committees as provided under the Transaction of Business Rules of the Government of India. Now, important committees includes Cabinet Committees of Economic Affairs. It says that this committee aims to review on a continuous basis about the economic trends, problems and prospects for evolving a consistent and integrated economic policy framework of the country. Further, it also direct and coordinate all activities in the economic field which requires policy decisions at the highest level, including foreign investment. It also deals with issue relating to fixation of prices of agricultural products and price control in respect of industrial raw materials as well as products, and also deal with increases in the prices of essential commodities or bulk goods under any form of formal or informal control. Further, it also lays down priorities for public sector investment. Next, it also deals with industrial licensing policies and also proposal including those relating to establishment of joint sector undertakings. Further, it also reviews the performance of central public sector enterprises and also consider cases with respect to their structural reorganization or financial restructuring. Next, it also reviews progress of activities relating to rural development, including those concerning small and marginal farmers. Further, it also considers issues relating to disinvestment. It also monitors the general price situation in the country and also decides upon appropriate corrective measures, including measures related to prices of essential commodities. It also takes decisions on export of all essential and agricultural commodities, particularly of Food Corporation of India stocks. Further, it also takes decision with respect to export of all essential and agricultural commodities and also considered measures required for making the public distribution system more efficient. So these can be said to be some of the important measures taken by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. Now, another important Cabinet Committee is with respect to the Cabinet Committee on Security. It deals with all defense related issues, all issues relating to law and order and internal security. It deals with policy matters concerning foreign affairs that have internal or external security implications, including cases relating to agreements with other countries on security related issues. Further, it deals with economic and political issues impinging on national security. Further, it also reviews manpower requirements which is necessary to maintain national security. And it also deals with expenditure related to internal security. So these can be said to be some of the important functions of Cabinet Committee on Security. Now, Cabinet Committee on Investment identifies key projects required to be implemented on a time-bound basis and such projects involving investment of rupees 1000 crore or more. Further, it also prescribes time limits with respect to approval and clearances by different ministries and departments concerned. It monitors the progress of identified projects, including time prescribed or time taken to obtain each approval or clearances. And it also oversees that statutory authorities discharges their functions and exercise their powers within a prescribed time frame in order to promote investment and economic growth. So these can be said to be some of the important aspects with respect to Cabinet Committee on Investment. Now, the Cabinet Committee on Skill Development provides for direction with respect to policies, programs and schemes and initiatives for skill development which is aimed at increasing the employability of the workforce for effectively meeting the emerging requirements. Further, it also directs and coordinates all activities relating to skill development, enhancing workforce participation, fostering employment growth, as well as identification and removal of gaps between requirements and availability of skills in different sectors. It also lays down targets with respect to implementation of all skill development initiatives taken by the concerned ministries and departments, and also periodically reviews the progress in this particular regard. So these can be said to be some of the important functions of Cabinet Committee on Skill Development. So yesterday, these cabinet committees were reconstituted as per the Government of India Transaction of Business Rules 1961. Some of these committees are headed by the Prime Minister. Let's see which are those committees. The Appointments Committee of the Cabinet is headed by the Prime Minister. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs is also headed by the Prime Minister. The Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs is headed by the Prime Minister. The Cabinet Committee on Security is also headed by the Prime Minister. The Cabinet Committee on Investment and Growth is headed by the Prime Minister, as well as the Cabinet Committee on Employment and Skill Development is also headed by the Prime Minister. So these are the different cabinet committees which is headed by the Prime Minister of India. These are Cabinet Committee on Employment and Skill Development, Cabinet Committee on Investment and Growth, Cabinet Committee on Security, Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs, Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, as well as the Appointments Committee of the Cabinet. So these are some of the important aspects with respect to Cabinet Committees of India constituted under the Government of India Transaction of Business Rules 1961. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news appears on page number 24. It says, why dragonfishes have transparent teeth. Now this news highlights that dragonfish has virtually transparent teeth that helps it to thrive in the deep dark ocean. Scientists have found that these teeth are made of the same materials as human teeth, but their microscopic structure is so different that light does not reflect off them. That is, these teeth are transparent. So when this dragonfish is waiting for its prey, then it seems as if the fish is almost invisible since light does not reflect off them or light passes through its teeth. Now there are two important features with respect to dragonfishes which you must understand from your prelims perspective. One is that it has transparent teeth, and the second is that this fish produces its own light through a chemical process known as bioluminescence. Now bioluminescence is the production as well as emission of light by a living organism, and this is the result of a chemical reaction during which the chemical energy gets converted into light energy. Now dragonfish produces this bioluminescence through a special organ known as photophore. It is believed that the fish can use these flashing lights in the dark waters so that they can attract their prey and even to signal potential mates. Now these dragonfishes is a ferocious predator which inhabits the deep oceans of the world, and it can be found up to a depth of 1500 meters, which is equivalent to 5000 feet. So it is with the help of these bioluminescent photophores, these dragonfish goes to the extreme depth in the ocean, and it also helps in catching them their prey. Now another important point to be noted is that these fang-like teeth which are transparent are covered in nanocrystals, and this prevents dragonfish's own bioluminescent light from reflecting off its own jaws. So this again becomes extremely important point with respect to dragonfishes. The IUCN status for the dragonfish is least concern. Now in your prelims examination, this topic forms a part of general science and biodiversity. So these important facts with respect to dragonfish becomes extremely important from your prelims perspective. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news appears on page number 17. The news reads, RBI waives NEFT and RTGS fee and to review ATM fees. And this move of the RBI is to boost digital fund transfers. To encourage digital transaction in India, the RBI has decided to waive off charges with respect to RTGS as well as NEFT. Now RTGS stands for Real Time Gross Settlement and NEFT stands for National Electronic Funds Transfer. Now RBI has also decided to set up a committee under the chairmanship of Chief Executive Officer of the Indian Banks Association to examine the present charges levied on ATM transactions. So on this note, let us wait for the report of this committee, as this committee is expected to submit its recommendations within 2 months of its first meeting. So in this news, let us understand certain basic facts with respect to RTGS and NEFT transfers. Now real-time gross settlement is a continuous and real-time settlement of funds transfer individually on a transaction by transaction basis. Whereas National Electronic Fund Transfer settles transaction in batches on a half-hourly basis. Under NEFT, individual, firms and corporates can transfer funds electronically. Now under National Electronic Funds Transfer, maximum which a person can transfer at one time is rupees 50,000. So under NEFT, more than rupees 50,000 cannot be transferred under a single transaction. Whereas RTGS is primarily meant for large value transactions. So the minimum amount which must be transferred through RTGS is rupees 2 lakh and above. However, there is no upper limit with respect to transfer under RTGS system. Now under NEFT, even a person who does not have a bank account can transfer fund through National Electronic Funds Transfer. Under the NEFT transfer system, it uses the IFSC code of the bank branch where the amount has to be transferred. Now IFSC stands for Indian Financial System Code, and it is a alphanumeric code that identifies a bank branch. So this is the basic difference between RTGS transfer, that is transfer through real-time gross settlement, and transfer under the National Electronics Fund Transfer. And RTGS transactions are processed continuously on a transaction by transaction basis, whereas transaction under National Electronic Funds Transfer settles transaction in batches on a half hourly basis. And with respect to IFSC, every branch of a bank is identified through a IFSC code, and IFSC stands for Indian Financial System Code, which is a alphanumeric number. That is, it has alphabets as well as numbers. Now another important point to be noted is that while transferring fund, the IFSC code of the branch where the funds needs to be transferred has to be mentioned both under RTGS as well as under NEFT transfer. Now another important point with respect to NEFT is that it facilitates one-way cross-border transfer of funds from India to Nepal, and it is also referred as Indo-Nepal Remittance Facility Scheme. So these become some of the important facts to be remembered from a prelims perspective with respect to RTGS as well as NEFT. Now this topic in your prelims examination forms a part of Indian economy. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news appears on page number 16. It says African Union suspends Sudan and seeks civilian rule. More than 100 people have died in the crackdown. Now as per this news, African Union has suspended Sudan's membership days after military launched a brutal attack on protesters which has killed more than 100 people. The news further highlights that the African Union Peace and Security Council has with immediate effect suspended the participation of Republic of Sudan in all African Union's activities until the effective establishment of a civilian-led transitional authority. So the African Union's Peace and Security Council has suspended the participation of Sudan in all African Union activities until Sudan restores the civilian rule. This decision of the African Union was made unanimously by members at an emergency meeting of African Union in Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa is the capital of Ethiopia. Now from your prelims perspective, this topic forms a part of current events of international importance. Further in this news, the chairman of African Union Commission has called for an immediate and transparent investigations into the killings in Sudan. So after these violent killings in Sudan, African Union has suspended all activities of Republic of Sudan until it restores a civilian rule or until power is transferred to a civilian authority in Sudan. As you can see in this map, Sudan also shared its banks with Red Sea. Now after understanding about this news, let us also learn certain basic facts with respect to African Union. Now African Union comprises of 55 member states. It was officially launched in 2002 in Durban in South Africa as a successor to the Organization of African Unity. Organization of African Unity functioned from 1963 to 1999. The guiding force for African Union is its vision, which states an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in global arena. So this is the vision of African Union. Now there are different organs of African Union. They are African Commission on Human and People's Right, African Court on Human and People's Right, African Union Commission on International Law, African Union Advisory Board on Corruption, an African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of Child. So these can be said to be some of the important organs of the African Union. Now with respect to African Union and India, an agreement has been signed between India and the African Union to initiate and strengthen the cooperation in health sector in a structured and organized manner. And this has been done by establishing an India-Africa Health Sciences Collaboration Platform. So these are some of the important and basic facts with respect to African Union which can be asked in a prelims or in a mains examination. Since this is a developing story, so let's wait for what happens next in Sudan. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. Now the next news appears on page number 1 and as an editorial on page number 12. Now the news says RBI cuts interest rate by 25 basis point, changes stance to accommodative, cuts financial year 20 growth projection to 7%. Now this news along with the editorial highlights about the decision of the Monetary Policy Committee of the RBI to reduce repo rate in order to spur growth in the Indian economy. Now this news with respect to concerns on slowdown in Indian economy was discussed in DNS dated 3rd June 2019 where different aspects were discussed with respect to slowing down of the Indian economy. So based on these concerns, the Monetary Policy Committee of the RBI has reduced the policy repo rate under the liquidity adjustment facility by 25 basis points to 5.75%, which was earlier at 6%. So the repo rate stands at 5.75%. It says that consequently the reverse repo rate under the LAF stands adjusted to 5.5% and the marginal standing facility rate and the bank rate stands at 6%. So we see the difference between repo rate, reverse repo rate and bank rate as well as marginal standing facility. So reverse repo rate is always below the repo rate and marginal standing facility rate and the bank rate is above the repo rate. So these basic facts must be remembered from a prelims perspective. It further highlights that the MPC also decided to change the stance of monetary policy from neutral to accommodative. And these decisions have been made in order to contain inflation or consumer price index inflation within the range of 4%. So this has been the decision of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank of India considering the slowdown in the Indian economy. Now this topic in your prelims examination becomes a part of Indian economy and your mains gets covered under GS paper 3, especially under Indian economy and issues relating to it. Now the reasons provided by MPC was both, that is slowdown in global economy as well as a slowdown in domestic economy. Now with respect to global economy, MPC stated that slowdown was reflected in trade and manufacturing activity and this slowdown was witnessed in various emerging market economies like China, Russia, South Africa and Brazil. With respect to China, it states that Chinese economy grew at the same pace as in the previous quarter. So we can say that there was no growth in Chinese economy. With Russian economy, it states that it had shown some signs of recovery. However, it has further weakened on muted domestic activity and trade. That is, there is hardly any domestic activity or trade in Russia. With respect to South Africa, it states that economic activity in South Africa contracted mainly by a sharp decline in manufacturing activity. And with respect to Brazil, it states that Brazil's economy contracted for the first time since 2016 as there are fears that it can turn into recessions. So these are the various reasons given by MPC with respect to global slowdown. Now with respect to domestic economy, it talks about slowdown in domestic economy, a decline of growth with respect to gross fixed capital formation. Now gross fixed capital formation refers to capital accumulated during an accounting period for a particular country. So gross fixed capital formation measures the net increase in fixed capital. Now fixed capital includes spending on land improvements, spending on plant, machinery and equipment purchases, construction of roads, railways, construction of private resident dwellings, as well as construction of commercial and industrial buildings. So these can be said to be a part of gross fixed capital formation. So the MPC highlights that gross fixed capital formation growth declined sharply to 3.6% after remaining in double digits in the previous 5 quarters. Further reasons includes contraction in agriculture and allied activities. Further, even growth in manufacturing activity weakened to 3.1% from 6.4% in the previous quarter. So these can be said to be some of the reasons with respect to declining growth. Now the concerns on slowdown have been discussed in detail on DNS dated 3rd June 2019. So you can refer to this particular video to understand the concerns in Indian economy. Now after a discussion, we shall move on to the practice questions. So these are your practice question number 1 and practice question number 2. What you can do is to take a pause of 5 seconds. First, it says, which of the following countries are adjacent to Red Sea? Options are Sudan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Kuwait. In this, Kuwait is not adjacent to Red Sea. So in this, the first 3 options are correct. So here, B becomes our correct answer. Moving on to the second question, it says, consider the following statements. First, repo rate is always more than the reverse repo rate. Second, bank rate is always less than the reverse repo rate. Third, reverse repo rate is always more than the bank rate. Now these options seems extremely confusing. Now given the present context, you remember that repo rate is at 5.75%, reverse repo rate is at 5.5% and bank rate is at 6%. So let's go through the options again. First, repo rate is always more than the reverse repo rate. Seeing this option, this statement seems correct. Second, bank rate is always less than the reverse repo rate. No, this statement is incorrect. Third, reverse repo rate is always more than the bank rate. No, the reverse is true. Hence again this statement becomes incorrect. So in this, A becomes the correct answer. Now moving on to practice question number 3 and practice question number 4. What you can do is to take another pause of 5 seconds. Now this question says, consider the following statements. First, African Union superseded Organization of African Unity. Yes, the statement is correct. Second, India and African Union has signed an agreement to build nuclear reactors. No, the statement is incorrect, as an agreement has been signed between India and African Union to initiate and strengthen the cooperation in health sector, not to develop nuclear reactors. So the second statement becomes incorrect. So here the correct answer is A, that is 1 only. The next question says, in the recently constituted cabinet committees, the Prime Minister heads which of the following cabinet committees? Options are Appointments Committee of the Cabinet. Yes, it is headed by the Prime Minister. Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. Yes, this is also headed by the Prime Minister. Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs. No, this is not headed by the Prime Minister. Fourth, Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs. Yes, it is also headed by the Prime Minister. So in this the statements 1, 2 and 4 are correct. So here C becomes the correct answer. With this, we come to an end to discussion of today's newspaper. Let's move on to the question for the day.